The misconception. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council floated in the void between star systems, a massive station that served as neutral ground for the hundreds of species that comprised the interstellar community. For 3,000 cycles, the Council had maintained order across known space, mediating disputes and establishing the laws that govern trade, travel, and territorial claims. Ambassador Thexaler of the Krillian Empire stood at his podium, his four arms crossed in a gesture of dismissive contempt. His scales, deep crimson and battle-scarred, caught the light as he addressed the assembly. The Krillians had held military dominance in the galaxy for over 5 centuries, and Thexaler carried himself with the arrogance that came with such power. Members of the Council, his voice rumbled through the translation matrix, we gather today to address the petition of a species that calls themselves humans. They wish to claim settlement rights in the Epsilon Corridor, a region that falls within Krillian territorial interests. Across the chamber, a small delegation of 3 humans stood at their assigned podium. They wore simple uniforms of dark blue, lacking the ornate armor and ceremonial weapons that most species brought to council sessions. The lead human, a woman with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight knot, met Thexaler's gaze without flinching. Councillor Veshna, the Quellan moderator whose species had founded the council millennia ago, activated her speaking crystal. Ambassador Thexaler, the humans have filed a legitimate claim according to council protocols. Their survey ships documented the Epsilon Corridor 18 standard months ago, and they have submitted colonization proposals that meet all requirements. Requirements written by species who actually matter? Thexaler shot back. These humans are newcomers. They have been part of this council for barely 3 cycles. They possess no significant military fleet, their technology is primitive by our standards, and their physical capabilities are laughable. He gestured toward the human delegation with one of his 4 arms. Look at them. They have no natural armor, no enhanced strength, no biological weapons. They breathe a common atmosphere, survive on a narrow temperature range, and their lifespans are absurdly short. They are weak, Counselor. And weakness has no place claiming territory in regions where real powers have interests. The human ambassador, whose nameplate identified her as Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, finally spoke. Her voice was calm, measured, and transmitted clearly through the translation system. Ambassador Thexaler makes several observations about human biology and technology. Some are accurate. We are indeed newcomers to this community. Our technology may seem primitive compared to species who have traveled the stars for millennia. She paused, letting her words settle across the chamber. However, the Council's laws do not base territorial rights on military strength or biological advantages. They are based on documented discovery, responsible stewardship proposals, and adherence to colonization ethics. In all these areas, humanity's claim to the Epsilon Corridor is sound. Thexaler's laugh was a harsh, grating sound. Stewardship proposals. Ethics. These are words that matter only when backed by the ability to defend what you claim. The Epsilon Corridor contains resources that the Krillian Empire requires. We have 36 military outposts within 5 light-years of that region. You have what? A handful of survey ships with weapons that could barely damage a cargo hauler? We have 47 vessels currently operating in and around the Epsilon Corridor, Morrison replied. Each is equipped for deep space research and resource assessment. Our colonization timeline projects first settlement within 8 standard months. 47 research vessels, Thexaler repeated mockingly. The Krillian Empire has 47 dreadnoughts in a single battle group. Your entire species could fit inside one of our colony ships. He turned to address the council as a whole. This is the problem with allowing every species that develops faster than light travel to join this body. The humans are not ready for the realities of interstellar competition. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Gennari delegate, whose aquatic species had long been allied with the Krillians, added their support. Ambassador Thexaler raises valid concerns. The humans lack the infrastructure to properly develop the Epsilon Corridor. Perhaps a joint development agreement, with Krillian oversight and the majority of resource allocation, would be more appropriate. Morrison's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We are not seeking Krillian oversight. We are exercising our rights under council law. Rights? Thexaler said, his tone dripping with condescension, are luxuries afforded to those who can maintain them. Let me be clear, Dr. Morrison. The Krillian Empire is prepared to offer your species a compromise. Withdraw your claim to the Epsilon Corridor, and we will grant you settlement rights in the Tau periphery. It's a smaller region, far from any strategic importance, but suitable for a species of your limited capacity. And if we decline this generous offer? Morrison asked. Thexaler's smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. Then the Krillian Empire will file a counterclaim to the Epsilon Corridor based on strategic military necessity. Our fleet will move to secure the region within the next standard month. Any human vessels remaining in the area after that time will be considered in violation of Krillian territory. Councillor Veshnaw's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. Ambassador Thexaler, you cannot simply threaten military action against a member species. This council was established to prevent such conflicts. I threaten nothing, Counselor. I merely state facts. The Krillian Empire has strategic interests that supersede the claims of a species that has been part of this community for less time than it takes to train a Krillian soldier. If the humans choose to position their fragile vessels in our path, any resulting destruction is a consequence of their poor judgment. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species, those who feared Krillian power or depended on their trade agreements, voiced support for the Empire's position. Others, particularly smaller or newer council members, argued that Morrison was correct about council law. The Quellans maintained that established protocols must be followed, but even their authority had limits when faced with species who commanded overwhelming military force. Morrison stood quietly through the chaos, her expression unreadable. Finally, she raised her hand, requesting recognition from the moderator. Councillor Veshnaw, may I respond? The chamber gradually quieted as Veshnaw granted permission. The human delegation has heard Ambassador Thexaler's position clearly. We understand that the Krillian Empire considers us weak, technologically inferior, and unworthy of exercising our legitimate territorial rights. We understand that they view military might as the ultimate arbiter of disputes, regardless of council law. She glanced at her two fellow delegates, a younger man and woman who had remained silent throughout the proceedings. Something passed between them, an unspoken communication that other species in the chamber noted but couldn't interpret. We also understand, Morrison continued, that words will not change the Empire's position. Therefore, humanity will not withdraw its claim to the Epsilon Corridor. We will proceed with our colonization timeline as filed. If the Krillian fleet moves to secure the region as threatened, they will find human vessels still present. Thexaler's expression shifted from contempt to something almost like pity. Dr. Morrison, I urge you to reconsider. I have reviewed your species' technological assessments. Your ships are fragile. Your weapons are short-range and low-yield. Your crews have no combat experience against opponents who have perfected warfare over centuries. This is not bravery. This is suicide. Perhaps, Morrison acknowledged, but it is our choice to make. So be it. Thexaler turned away from the human delegation. Councillor Veshnaw, let the record show that the Krillian Empire formally disputes humanity's claim to the Epsilon Corridor. We will secure the region in 25 standard days. The humans have been warned. As the session concluded and delegates began to depart, Morrison and her team remained at their podium. Other ambassadors gave them wide berth, some offering sympathetic looks, others avoiding eye contact entirely. Everyone in the council knew what would happen when the Krillian fleet arrived. It would be a massacre. In a private chamber afterward, Morrison met with her delegation and a holographic projection of Admiral Sarah Chin, who commanded the human fleet in the Epsilon Corridor. You saw the proceedings? Morrison asked. Chin nodded. Her face, weathered by years in space but still sharp with intelligence, showed no fear. Every word. Thexaler is exactly what our intelligence suggested. Arrogant, dismissive, and completely convinced of Krillian superiority. He's not wrong about some things, said Marcus Webb, the younger male delegate. We are physically weaker than most species here. Our technology is less advanced in many areas. We've been flying between stars for barely 60 years while some of these species have been doing it for millennia. But he's wrong about what matters, added the third delegate, Dr. Kenji Yamamoto. He thinks strength is measured in armor plating and weapon yields. He doesn't understand what makes humanity dangerous. Chen's smile was thin and cold. No, he doesn't. And we're going to teach him. How long until the Krillian fleet arrives? 25 days, as he said. Our intelligence suggests he'll bring at least 2 battle groups. Between 80 and 100 ships. Against our 47. Yes. Those aren't favorable odds by anyone's calculation. Morrison leaned forward. Admiral, if you believe we should withdraw, now is the time to say so. No one would question the decision. The council expects us to back down. Chen was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant as she calculated scenarios and outcomes. When she spoke, her voice was firm. No. We hold the corridor. Humanity didn't claw its way up from caves and across oceans and through the void of space just to surrender the moment someone bigger decided they wanted what was ours. The Krillians think they know what to expect. They think we're weak. Her smile widened slightly. Let them think that for 25 more days. Let them come to the Epsilon corridor expecting an easy victory. Let them bring their dreadnoughts and their battle-tested tactics and their absolute certainty that they've already won. And then? Webb asked. And then, Admiral Sarachin replied, we show them what weakness looks like when it refuses to break. The hologram flickered out, leaving the 3 human delegates alone in the chamber. They had 25 days to prepare. 25 days before the galaxy would discover whether humanity's confidence was justified or whether they were simply another species that would learn the hard way that ideals meant nothing without the power to defend them. Outside the council station, the stars burned with cold, indifferent light. Across known space, word of the impending conflict spread. The Krillian Empire prepared its fleet with routine efficiency. Other species began placing bets on how quickly the humans would be crushed. None of them understood what was coming. None of them realized that humanity's greatest strength had never been physical might or technological superiority. It was something the Krillians, in all their centuries of military dominance, had never truly faced: the refusal to accept defeat, the ability to adapt under impossible pressure, and the creativity born from necessity. The galaxy was about to learn what weak really meant. The revelation. 25 standard days passed with agonizing slowness across the galaxy. In the Epsilon corridor, Admiral Sarachin stood on the bridge of the UHMS Perseverance, humanity's flagship in the region. The vessel was smaller than most warships fielded by established powers, its hull plating thinner, its weapons fewer. To any observer comparing specifications, it seemed hopelessly outmatched. Chin had spent every moment of those 25 days proving that specifications didn't tell the whole story. Admiral, long-range sensors are picking up hyperspace signatures, Lieutenant Commander Jackson reported from the sensor station. Multiple contacts. Very multiple. How many? 87 vessels confirmed so far. Configuration matches Krillian battle groups. Heavy cruisers, dreadnoughts, carrier ships. They're emerging from hyperspace in formation at the edge of the system. Chin nodded slowly, her hands clasped behind her back. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. No panic, no fear. They had trained for this moment every day since the council meeting. Open a channel to all ships. Fleet-wide. A moment later, 46 other human vessels received her transmission. They were spread across the Epsilon corridor in what appeared to be random positions, no clear defensive formation, no concentrated firepower. To the approaching Krillian fleet, it must have looked like chaos or incompetence. It was neither. This is Admiral Chin to all vessels. The Krillians have arrived as promised. In approximately 30 minutes, they will be within their maximum weapons range. At that point, Ambassador Thexaler will likely contact us with one final demand for surrender. She paused, allowing herself a slight smile. We will decline. After that, they'll open fire, expecting to destroy us quickly and claim the corridor. Remember your training. Remember what we learned about their tactics. And remember that they think we're weak. Let's teach them the difference between weakness and flexibility. Chin out. On the Krillian flagship Eternal Dominance, Fleet Commander Crethanel watched the human vessels on his tactical display with something close to disappointment. He had commanded the Krillian military for 30 cycles, had conquered 14 star systems, and had never lost a battle. This would be his easiest victory yet. They haven't even formed a proper defensive line, his tactical officer observed. The vessels are scattered across 300,000 kilometers. No overlapping fire zones, no support positions. It's amateur positioning at best. They are amateurs, Crethanel replied. Their species has been in space for less than a single cycle of our homeworld. They have no military tradition, no battle doctrine, no experience. This will be over before it truly begins. Should we offer them surrender one final time, Commander? Crethanel considered. Yes. Protocol demands it, and it will be useful for the Council records. Show that we gave them every opportunity to avoid destruction. The communication was opened. Ambassador Thexaler's face appeared on the screen from his position aboard one of the cruisers, having come specifically to witness what he called humanity's education. Human vessels, this is the Krillian battle fleet. You are ordered to power down your weapons systems and withdraw from the Epsilon corridor immediately. This is your final warning. Comply or be destroyed. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the Krillian displays. She looked tired, Crethanel thought. Good. She understood the futility of her position. Ambassador Thexaler, Fleet Commander Crethanel. The human fleet declines your offer. The Epsilon Corridor is ours by right of discovery and council law. If you proceed with hostile action, we will defend our claim. Thexaler's laugh echoed across the channel. Defend? With what? We outnumber you nearly 2 to 1. Each of our dreadnoughts masses more than 3 of your largest vessels. Our shields can withstand anything your weapons can generate. Your bravery is admirable, Admiral, but bravery without power is just a different form of suicide. Then I suppose, Chin replied calmly, you'll find out which we're demonstrating. Chin out. The channel closed. Crethanel allowed himself a moment of respect for the human admiral's composure, even if her tactical judgment was fatally flawed. All vessels advance. Standard envelopment formation. We'll surround them, destroy any that resist, and capture the rest for study. Weapons free when they enter range. The Krillian fleet moved forward like a predator advancing on wounded prey. Their formation was textbook perfect, refined through centuries of warfare. The heavy dreadnoughts formed the center, their massive weapons arrays primed. Cruisers flanked them, ready to intercept any desperate human attack runs. Fighter carriers hung back, prepared to launch interceptors if needed, though no one expected the humans to have effective fighters. As the distance closed, the human vessels began moving. Not into a defensive formation as the Krillians expected, but in seemingly random directions. Some accelerated toward the Krillian fleet, others angled away, a few appeared to be attempting to flank. They're panicking, the tactical officer reported. No coordination. Each ship is acting independently. Or they never had a real battle plan to begin with, Crethanel suggested. Maintain formation. Target the vessels moving to intercept first. Make examples of them. The range counter continued dropping. 400,000 kilometers. 300,000. 200,000. At 150,000 kilometers, the Krillian dreadnoughts opened fire. Massive energy beams lanced across space, brilliant and deadly. They targeted the 3 human vessels that had accelerated toward the Krillian fleet, expecting to see them vaporized instantly. Instead, the human ships jinked hard to port and starboard, their course changes sharp and sudden. The Krillian weapons, designed to track predictable trajectories, missed. Not by much but enough. Adjust targeting parameters, Crethanel ordered, frowning. Anticipate evasive maneuvers. The dreadnoughts fired again. This time, 2 beams struck their targets, but the human shields absorbed the impacts. The shields flickered, weakened, but held. Impossible, the tactical officer muttered. Our weapons should have overwhelmed their shield capacity. Check the sensor readings, Crethanel commanded. Sir, the human shields are cycling. They're rotating frequency and polarity faster than our weapons can compensate. It's like they knew exactly what frequency we'd use and adapted before impact. Crethanel's eyes narrowed. They've been studying our weapons. Intelligent, but it won't save them. Continue firing. Their shields can't hold forever. What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists for generations. The human vessels that had appeared to be fleeing suddenly reversed course, accelerating back toward the Krillian fleet at angles that made no tactical sense. The Krillians fired at them, but the humans jinked and weaved through the incoming fire with an agility that shouldn't have been possible for vessels of their size. Then, at 70,000 kilometers, the humans opened fire. Their weapons were not the massive energy beams the Krillians used. Instead, they launched what appeared to be simple kinetic projectiles. Chunks of dense metal accelerated to tremendous velocities by magnetic rails. Railguns. Thexaler's voice came over the command channel. They're using primitive kinetic weapons? Our shields will stop those easily. The first wave of projectiles struck the lead Krillian dreadnought's shields. They did indeed stop, their kinetic energy dissipated. But there were hundreds of them. And they kept coming. The human vessels had divided into teams without any visible communication, using prearranged tactics. One group would draw fire, forcing the Krillians to track them, while another group positioned themselves at different angles and unleashed barrages of kinetic rounds. Their rate of fire is enormous, the tactical officer reported, his voice rising with concern. Each human vessel is launching projectiles faster than our shields can recharge between impacts. Crethanel watched as the lead dreadnought's shields finally collapsed under the sustained barrage. Kinetic rounds began impacting the hull, punching through armor that had been designed to withstand energy weapons, not high-velocity physical projectiles. All vessels, concentrate fire on Grid 7 Alpha. Destroy those human ships now. The Krillian fleet attempted to focus their weapons, but the humans refused to cooperate. They were constantly moving, never staying in one position long enough to be targeted effectively. Their acceleration curves were sharper, their maneuverability superior. The humans had built their vessels smaller and lighter specifically to be faster and more agile. What the Krillians had interpreted as weakness, smaller sized, lighter armor, simpler weapons, was actually deliberate design philosophy. 3 dreadnoughts reporting shield failures, an officer called out. Hull breaches on the Vengeance's blade. They're requesting support. Send cruiser squadrons to intercept the human vessels harassing our dreadnoughts, Crethanel ordered. Our shields may be vulnerable to sustained kinetic bombardment, but our armor will hold. The cruisers moved to engage, and for a moment, it seemed like the Krillian tactics would prevail through sheer numbers. Then the human vessels did something unexpected. They stopped firing at the dreadnoughts and targeted the cruisers instead. But they didn't use their railguns. Sir, the humans are launching missiles. Small, fast-moving. Hundreds of them. Our point defense will handle missiles easily, Crethanel said, but his confidence was wavering. The missiles closed with incredible speed, weaving through space in patterns that made them nearly impossible to target. The Krillian point defense systems fired, destroying many, but there were too many targets moving too erratically. When the missiles struck, they didn't explode with conventional warheads. Instead, they released clouds of metallic particles that adhered to the Krillian ship's hulls and sensor arrays. What is this? Thexaler demanded. Some kind of chemical weapon? Negative, Ambassador, a technical officer responded. It's interfering with our sensors, creating blind spots in our targeting systems. And sir, the particles are magnetic. They're disrupting our shield generators. Admiral Chen watched from the Perseverance as her battle plan unfolded exactly as rehearsed. The Krillians were powerful, yes, but they were predictable. They had fought the same way for centuries because it had always worked. Their tactics were refined but rigid. Humanity had no such legacy. They had studied every battle the Krillians had ever fought, analyzed every tactic, and designed their entire fleet specifically to counter Krillian strengths while exploiting their weaknesses. Alpha Team, continue harassment on the dreadnoughts. Beta Team, deploy chaff missiles on the carrier group. Gamma Team, prepare for precision strikes on their command ship. Admiral, Jackson said quietly, we're taking casualties. The Montgomery has lost main power. The Singapore is venting atmosphere. I know. Chen's voice was heavy. Keep them fighting as long as they can, then order evacuation. We're not here to die pointlessly. We're here to win. The battle continued for another hour. The Krillians, frustrated and increasingly desperate, broke formation to pursue individual human vessels. This was exactly what Chen wanted. Once scattered, the Krillians couldn't support each other effectively. Human vessels would cluster on isolated Krillian ships, overwhelming them with coordinated fire, then scatter before reinforcements could arrive. It was a tactic that required perfect timing, constant communication, and crews willing to take enormous risks. The humans demonstrated all three. When the Krillian flagship Eternal Dominance finally took critical damage, its shield generators destroyed by a sustained railgun barrage and its sensor arrays blinded by chaff clouds, Fleet Commander Crethanel made the decision that would echo across the galaxy. All vessels cease fire. Withdraw to previous position. Open a channel to the human flagship. Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen once more. She looked exhausted, her uniform torn and blood-stained from where a console had exploded near her station. But her eyes were sharp and determined. Fleet Commander, she said simply. Admiral Chen, Crethanel replied. I am offering a cessation of hostilities. The Krillian Empire acknowledges your claim to the Epsilon Corridor. There was silence on the bridge of the Perseverance. Then Chen nodded slowly. Acknowledged, Fleet Commander. Human vessels will hold position and cease fire. Across the battlefield, weapons went silent. The Krillian fleet, battered and humiliated, began collecting their damaged vessels. They had lost 11 ships destroyed, 23 severely damaged, and countless crew members. The humans had lost 5 vessels destroyed and 8 damaged. The Krillians had come expecting an easy victory. They had found something they never anticipated, an enemy that refused to fight according to established rules. In the weeks that followed, the Battle of Epsilon Corridor became the most analyzed military engagement in galactic history. Military strategists from dozens of species studied the human tactics with fascination and growing respect. The Krillian Empire, for their part, did something unprecedented. They requested a formal meeting with human military advisors to discuss tactical innovation and adaptive warfare doctrine. Ambassador Morrison stood before the Galactic Council once more, this time with Admiral Chin beside her. The chamber was silent as Counselor Veshna addressed them. Admiral Chin, Ambassador Morrison, the Council has reviewed the conflict in the Epsilon Corridor. While we regret that violence occurred, the Council recognizes humanity's right to defend their legitimate territorial claim. The Epsilon Corridor is hereby officially recognized as human territory. Thexaler, standing at his podium with his arms crossed, spoke without his usual arrogance. The Krillian Empire acknowledges this ruling. We also acknowledge that we underestimated humanity. You were called weak, but you proved that assessment incorrect. Chin stepped forward. Ambassador Thexaler, if I may speak plainly, we are weak. By almost every measure you used to judge us, you were correct. We are physically fragile. Our technology is less advanced. Our military tradition is virtually non-existent compared to yours. The chamber remained silent, delegates leaning forward to hear her words. But weakness isn't the same as helplessness. You assumed that because we lacked your strengths, we lacked all strength. You didn't account for human adaptability, our capacity for creative problem solving, or our refusal to accept defeat. You fought the battle you trained for. We fought the battle we needed to win. She paused, making eye contact with delegates around the chamber. Humanity learned something important in our history long before we reached the stars. The strongest army doesn't always win. The most advanced technology doesn't guarantee victory. What wins is the side that can adapt faster, think more creatively, and refuse to give up when logic says they should. Crethanael's voice came over the communications channel from the Krillian fleet still stationed near Council space. Admiral Chin is correct. The Krillian military has begun reviewing our tactical doctrine. We have been dominant for so long that we forgot the most important military principle. Never underestimate your opponent. Morrison added, humanity doesn't seek conflict with the Krillian Empire or any council member. We simply want to be treated according to the same laws that govern everyone else. Judge us by our actions and our adherence to council principles, not by assumptions about our capabilities. Counselor Veshna's crystalline form pulsed with approval. The council acknowledges Ambassador Morrison's statement. Let this conflict serve as a reminder to all members that strength takes many forms. New species should not be dismissed simply because they are different from what came before. As the session concluded, delegates approached the human representatives with new interest. The Gennari, who had previously supported the Krillians, requested diplomatic discussions. The Vaxian Collective, a species known for their own innovative thinking, proposed a cultural exchange program. Even the Quellans expressed admiration for humanity's approach to an impossible situation. In the following months, humanity's position in the Galactic Council transformed completely. They were no longer the weak newcomers to be dismissed or pitted. They had earned respect not through conquest but through their refusal to accept others' definitions of what they could achieve. The Epsilon Corridor was developed as humanity's first major colony outside their home system. The settlement was named Chin Station in honor of the admiral who had defended it. Admiral Sarah Chin herself returned to Earth, where she was celebrated but remained characteristically modest. In an interview that was broadcast across human space and translated for alien audiences throughout the galaxy, she was asked what she would say to species that still considered humanity weak. Her answer was simple: let them think that. Underestimating humanity has never worked out well for anyone who tried it. We've spent our entire history being underestimated, by nature, by our environment, by each other. We're used to it. And we're very good at proving people wrong. The interviewer pressed further. Do you think humanity is destined for greatness among the stars? Chin considered the question carefully before responding. I think humanity is destined to be exactly what we've always been: survivors, adapters, and problem solvers. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. We're not the fastest or the most advanced. But we're stubborn, creative, and we refuse to quit. That's not weakness. That's who we are. Across the galaxy, those words resonated. Young species joining the council found encouragement in humanity's example. Established powers reconsidered their assumptions about what made a species strong. The Krillian Empire, to their credit, took their defeat as an opportunity for growth rather than humiliation. They began incorporating human tactical advisors into their military academies, learning that innovation and adaptability could coexist with traditional strength. And humanity, having proved themselves to the galaxy, continued doing what they did best: exploring, adapting, and refusing to accept limitations that others tried to place on them. The story of the Battle of Epsilon Corridor became a legend, told and retold across 1,000 worlds. It was a reminder that in the vast darkness between the stars, strength came in many forms. The galaxy had called humanity weak. Humanity had proved them wrong. Not by becoming what the galaxy expected them to be, but by remaining exactly who they were, imperfect, vulnerable, but utterly unwilling to surrender. That, in the end, was the true measure of strength.